This podcast is a collaboration between Costard and Touchstone Productions and the Dads from the Crypt podcast.
Good evening, culture vultures, and welcome to another installment of Mashed to Pieces Theater.
Hi, it's Al. Welcome to another episode of the How Not to Make a Movie podcast, coming to you from Baja. Before we get going, I want to remind you to please, if you're watching this on the YouTube version, hit the like button like you were the Crypt Keeper happily electrocuting himself. As the Crypt Keeper would put it, sure get a charge out of it. And don't forget to subscribe. That goes for whether you're watching or listening. And we've got lots of great episodes and guests coming up. Do you really want to miss any of the action kiddies? We start this season now 48 episodes ago with an episode about how exactly the Crypt Keeper came to be. It didn't just drop from the sky as is, you know. Actually, it took the work of 4 different people to create this iconic character. First, it was Kevin Yagher, the guy who created the Crypt Keeper puppet and all its animatronic bits and pieces. Then actor John Kassir gave the Crypt Keeper its amazing voice. And that laugh. Want to know where it came from? John will tell that story. But if you watch or listen to The Crypt Keeper and Tales from the Crypt Season 1, Episode 1, and then The Crypt Keeper in Season 3, Episode 1, you'll notice a huge difference. Lots of huge differences. That's when Gil Adler and I stepped in and took over Crypt. Among the changes we made to the show, in addition to getting the budget back under control and going after the biggest stars we could find, like Michael J. Fox and Kirk Douglas, we took the show back to its EC comic roots as ironic, gleefully warped morality tales. We also reimagined the Crypt Keeper and gave him a rich interior life. We turned him from a scary puppet into, well, a franchise. While I handled all the writing chores, Gil produced all the Crypt Keeper segments and directed a lot of them, including the Crypt Keeper segments in both Tales from the Crypt feature films. The truth is, if you take any of those 4 people out of this equation, there's no equation, and we're not having this conversation. But, of course, everything starts with words on a page. How did we write all those segments? Well, there was a process.
How to write a Crypt Keeper segment.
One of my jobs on Tales from the Crypt was to write all the Crypt Keeper segments. Hell, one of the main reasons Joel Silver hired me was because I wanted to turn the Crypt Keeper from a puppet who wore the same outfit every episode and made pretty much the same dumb jokes into something better, a character. My question was, the one that got me hired, what did the Crypt Keeper do when he punched the clock at the end of the working day and went home to his real crypt? What did the Crypt Keeper do when he wasn't playing the Crypt Keeper? What were his hobbies? What were his likes and dislikes? What did he do for fun? What were his musical tastes? What did he watch on TV? What did he like to eat and drink? Who were his friends? And what did he really feel about them? Friends like the Grim Reaper.
I was just a fat guy in a sequin suit. I took him anyway.
Is this guy boring or what?
I think we did okay in the end. Putting what I did together with Kevin's animatronics, John Kassir's voice, and Gil's directing and producing created a pretty iconic character. But can I tell you a deep, dark secret?
Greetings, thrill shriekers.
Writing the Crypt Keeper segments was pure hell. It wasn't like pulling teeth. It was like pulling organs out my nose and my ass at the exact same time. The process worked like this. I'd start with whatever aspect of the Crypt Keeper's life we were going to explore that segment. If there was a way to tie it into the episode, great. But if not, it wasn't a deal breaker. It all came down to words and lists. 3 to 4 times a season, we'd write and produce Crypt Keeper segments. To begin the process, I'd haul out my lists. I kept dozens of lists of jobs and hobbies and interests the Crypt Keeper could have. Step 1, choose a job the Crypt Keeper might have. Let's say podcasting. So for this episode, my goal is to create as many Crypt Keeperisms as possible based on podcasting vernacular. With enough of those in my mind and on my list, I could squeeze out something for the Crypt Keeper to say. Fun fact, I always wrote Crypt Keeper segments first by hand. Something about being more connected to the words this way. So podcasting vernacular. Well, there's podcasting, internet, podcaster, social media, edit, episode, publish, Spotify. Spotify could be Rodify. Meh. Apple, Google, streaming. Boy, nothing's coming. Wow, this is a tough one. Franchise, format, RSS feed, cadence, branding. Boy, website. Yeah, website. Customization, Instagram, TikTok. Geez, there's nothing coming. Let's try going the other way with this one. You know, sometimes it works better starting with words the Crypt Keeper uses, like ghost. Customization can be ghostimization. Boy, is that lame. Shriek, horror, scare, die, kill, hack, slay. I forgot how maddening this was. Vile, putrid, match, bleed, bloody, gore. What was I thinking trying to do this again? I always hated these days. Make me crazy and fucking mental. I always hated days like this.
What was I thinking trying to...
What was I doing, Rosie?
As I said, we started this season with the first time ever four-way conversation between the four people responsible for creating the Crypt Keeper. But we didn't put out the whole interview. We held some of it back, and some of it ended up on the cutting room floor. Well, not this time. For this episode, we're going to let you hear the whole unexpurgated, unedited interview. In fact, this time, we haven't cut it at all. And we've even thrown in the part of the interview that happened after we had technical difficulties. So this will be the first time anyone other than the four of us have heard that content. There's some pretty good stuff in there. As our pal, the Crypt Keeper, would put it, that's interntainment. Of course, he'd do it better.
Kevin, my good man, where are you hiding the painting, dude? You do not age. You do
we all
not
had the same
age.
reaction.
I just told these guys it's all the silicone and the foam latex.
He was going to say exactly. He was like,
and the makeup effects lifts and all that stuff. You know,
right? It's got a lot of formaldehyde in it.
Yeah.
He's like, actually, it's filters. You fuckers.
Listen, I tried the formaldehyde myself, and look what happened to me.
I know. They told you not to drink it.
Are you,
now you tell me.
From you in LA?
I am in LA. I am in LA. I've been doing a lot of, you should all know that I've been doing a lot of conventions. I usually didn't do very many a year, but I had, because of the pandemic,
Yes,
I hadn't done any in a long time, and I had so many requests and a new home, and I figured I could do a lot to that home.
Oh God.
We're doing some of these conventions, and there isn't a single one that, you know, the kids didn't, you know, say, please give my beast to all these fabulous people. You know, Kevin, you're, you know, the most, maybe the most ripped off thing without licensing in horror. You know, that's the Bordello of Blood, you know, thing. Remember, it's like people try to steal this. I use it to photobomb people, and with my little, when I do my little, you know, photo ops and stuff. But I mean,
That's great. You're in the crypt.
you know, I just used it as a virtual background here. You know, some years ago, Jack Wall had given me, you know, a CD with all the photos that they took, you know, with really nice files on them, and I've kept them. God bless him. I can't believe he's gone already.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
And Alan, you're in LA? Oh no, you said you're Highland Park.
I'm in Highland Park
Right.
as we sit here today. So here's, now that we've got you all, here's what I'd love to do with you all today. I don't know if you listened to season 1 of this of the podcast.
I have.
You know, the premise of the podcast of season 1 was, you know, what happens when good filmmaking goes horribly off the rails. And when or as I put it, when filmmaking craft turns to crap. And the whole first season was really about Tales from the Crypt. and about the making of Bordello of Blood. For the second season, we're going to open it up, and it'll be, a combination of things. It'll be, for the most part, really horrible filmmaking experiences that other filmmakers that we know have had, and that's what we'll invite them in, because Gil and I will do this together now. And it's just all the filmmakers we know giving their horror stories comparable to Bordello of Blood. Good luck with that. But we're
Joel
also
Silver
going to,
involved in all of those horror stories.
the man's reach is incredibly vast. There's a moment in episode 5 when I talk about what ultimately happened to me. I was out of it for almost 2 decades. I was out of it. And I was a dad, and I was coaching ultimate Frisbee.
Wow.
And and Billie Eilish, well, I coached Billie Eilish because, I do it in Silver Lake.
Did she pay with song?
This was, it's funny. She's not much of a player. Phineas, her brother, is quite good.
Wow.
Quite good. Anyway.
Where were you, Kevin, when he needed that conversation with you to get the songs?
I know.
So, ultimate Frisbee is, I don't know if you know the sport. It's just Frisbee. It's kind of like football, soccer, and it's very few rules, self-officiating. But one day there was a question about the rules, and I had to go look it up. And who the fuck invented ultimate Frisbee? Joel Silver.
No.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
How's that possible?
That is the button on episode 5 of season 1.
Well, somebody else invented it. He just paid them to, to take it away from them.
Truly.
He paid them nothing to take it away from them.
But this is part of
angry Frisbee. I would believe you.
Yeah, truly.
I think Alan, it was the Romanian Joel Silver, I think, that you're talking about.
So, it's funny. Joel's reach is staggering sometimes. It comes at you from the least expected places. You got to be so careful. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about, just the 4 of us, really is a conversation that we've never had about each of our roles in creating something that we don't own.
Yeah, right.
I
had a piece of it, and I did see money the first year. And then Jack came on board, and that all
wow
went away.
But we will talk about these things too, because really and truly, this is a conversation that an awful lot of people outside of this conversation would love to hear, because it's never been had, and we each have contributed something quite significant to this creation that the whole world knows to this day. There's something to be said for all of us. And this thing of ours that Joel owns. So I want to talk about that, but I also, since in season 1, Gil and I, we had a chance to talk about how we got into this mess before and I'm going to consider that the interview is already started. If you guys are good, and I'm recording it. In season 1, I had a chance and Gil had a chance to, like I said, to tell our story, how we got into this, how we got to Tales from the Crypt to begin with. No one suddenly landed there by accident. I
kind of did. It was an accident, but I'll get into that.
Yeah. Hey, okay. Since you started it, all right. You grew up in Kansas.
No, I actually, my grandparents and my parents are from Kansas. I grew up in Ohio. I was born in Illinois, in Ohio. Yeah.
Okay.
I told you, Alan. I told you those red shoes that he clicks 3 times. They weren't his.
Yeah. That gets me nowhere. I look really good in them, though.
I will bet.
No, yeah, and so anyway, this whole thing started for me was I had a shop in Glendale, and I was fortunate enough to be across from Joel Silver's storage unit, and Joel used to come in every so often. He was working on I think it was Hudson Hawk or around that time or something like that, and he would come in his Joel way, and he would come in. What are you working on? What are you working on? And I said, I'm just, doing this or that. I had a lot of different projects going on. And one time he would just look around, and I'm telling you, 30 seconds. He'd walk in, would never even say hello. He just come in and say, what are you working
Joel of him.
Yeah. And, what are you working on? What are you working on? And as I was still in sentence telling him, he would walk out. I mean, it just would do this all the time to me. So I said, who's this guy? Who's this guy? First, I have another story. First time I talked to Joel was about doing Predator. It was called The Hunter. That goes way back. And I actually turned it down because this guy on the phone was screaming the whole time. And I said, who is this madman? I can't. And I ended up turning that down, funny enough. And Stan Winston had recommended me for it. Anyway, back to Tales. So he would come over and say this. And he walked in one time and he said, what are you working on? I told him again. And he said, okay. He said, what are you doing next? And I said, I'm going to take some time off and write and direct. And he said, I may have something for you. And that's how I, by accident, sort of in a sense of having this storage unit across from Joel, met Joel, and that's how I got involved with
how you got Crypt. Now, but like a lot of us, you'd been circling around for a while.
Yeah.
Rain.
Funny, you did some work on Hitchhiker.
Mm-hmm. Yes, with Mr. Adler there.
Yeah. You go back in 1987. You were doing mannequin design.
Yes. Yeah. We did an episode with James Remar, right?
Oh, yes.
Remar, yes.
Oh boy, that's funny how that connects, because then we all did, of course, a Crypt with.
That's right. In fact, that is, I've got James's head in the back. I did them. And the funny enough, my wife ends up doing. Was on Seventh Heaven, and she ends up doing an episode where she's got to kiss James Remar. So the whole thing is, circular. It all came back, and
Oh boy.
So anyway, yeah, that was and I don't know if I think it was Gil that called me. Was it? Do you remember it all, Gil? It was so many episodes and lifetime ago, but
I think it was.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I think you called me, or somebody contacted me, and then about doing these 4 mannequins of a family that were in a house. I can barely remember the story, but it was.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, Carl Schenkel, I think, was the director, German director.
Okay.
And I actually thought I called you, but I thought I was calling Joel Silver. No. Sorry.
Yeah. And I remember
Another accident.
I've got a picture with me posing on the set, and we shot that in Vancouver, did we not?
Yeah. In Port Coquitlam. I actually remember the house. I don't know. I couldn't take you to it now, but I remember it was Port Coquitlam, and I kept thinking, why are we in Port Coquitlam, which is like a 15-minute drive outside of Vancouver? Couldn't we find a house like closer?
I just remember how beautiful it was. The whole place is so gorgeous.
Yeah.
But anyway, I have a picture someplace in my files here with me and in front of the mannequins, and James is photobombing me in the background. I have no idea. He's sticking his head and making that crazy James Remar looking face. But that was a quick job. It was quick TV. It was quick. Yeah, it was a quick job for me. But yeah, and that's I first met you.
Yeah.
Now, you also did some Freddy's.
I did. Yeah, I did Nightmare on Elm Street 2, 3, 4, and the first TV series, which Mr. Adler also. And that was all before Tales.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So I'm simply laying out, for the audience that there were connections that preceded Crypt that, some of us, we kind of bumped into each other a little bit beforehand.
Yeah, who knew?
As you also have a Children of the Corn on your resume. It's just not the one that we did.
Yes. I think I did work on 3.
You did 3.
I went off to do, it was the middle of Tales. And I think when I left, I couldn't do direct the wraparounds, and Gil took over. I remember.
Right.
I went off and directed Hellraiser 4, which is now an Alan Smithy. I'm very proud of that. Took my name off. But and one of the producers was finishing Children of the Corn 3 or 4 or something. I think it was 3, and asked me to help him out. So I was doing that prior to directing. It was to doing the effects for Children of the Corn. Which one did you guys do?
2. We are guilty. I'm sorry, responsible for reviving the whole stupid series.
Oh, great! It was dying, and then you guys, gave it.
It was dead. It was, nobody wanted to do it. It was. There's a whole story. I'm not going to bother with it here, but there's a whole story how that silly movie got made.
That's hilarious.
But anyway, all right. So there were a lot of associations with Kevin before we got to the Crypt Keeper.
Yeah.
John, how did you?
I had no association with any of you assholes.
Yeah, lucky you.
And he did everything he possibly could to continue that.
It's true. It's true. Actually, am I turning green? It doesn't look like I'm coming on. Am I coming on when I speak?
No, you look lovely.
Thank you. No, it just you have that thing where it turns green. Whoever's speaking at whatever time. And
Oh yeah, no, you were yellowing up. You were the highlighted speaker.
Fabulous. There you go. All right. Are we seen all the time? Just
I'm gonna the YouTube version of this will simply be the gallery view.
Got it. All right. Cool. Just so I know. Just so I'm not picking my nose in the middle of Gil's interview. I just want to know these things.
There's no time off.
My association was because of HBO, and
Right, you've been first in 10.
yeah, I had it's strangely won Star Search as a stand-up comic in 1985.
Why do you say strangely?
Because
All the words to use.
because I wasn't a stand-up comic at the time.
Huh.
I was doing an off-Broadway show called Three Guys Naked from the Waist Down.
Waist down, yeah.
Which starred myself and Scott Bakula and Jerry Colker, who wrote the piece, and who I told you reminded me of in all the positive ways. But Alan, but just as a writer, a brilliant writer. But
I'm glad it wasn't one of those Niagara Falls kind of relationships.
Slowly I turn.
Yeah, exactly.
Step by step.
Inch by inch.
Inch by inch. There's got to be a Crypt Keeper one for
Yeah,
that.
you got it.
But literally, they they approached me while I was doing the show and said, "We want you to be on Star Search." And I said, "What is a singer?" Because it was a musical. Think Dreamgirls, but with stand-up comics. And it was a big hit off Broadway, and they saw me in it, and everybody thought that I was, this untethered kind of, Andy Kaufman-ish, Robin Williams kind of stand-up, and here I was playing a part. And they said, "No, we want you to come on as a stand-up comic." And I was like, "Well, I'm not really a stand-up comic." They go, "Well, you can win $100,000. I'm like, "Fuck, have you seen my act?" So... Literally, I was, on there making up this shit as I was going along, and I didn't really have an act, so I was doing, voices and characters, and I do like the Wizard of Oz in 2.5 minutes, and they would give me 2.5 minutes, and every time I won, I'd have to come back on, and I'd have to come up with another bit. So, Kevin's walking out on me already. Anyway,
It was something we said.
Something, yes, definitely something we said.
Hello.
And but so when I was my first series was First and 10, which was HBO's first series, and I got a call from my agent saying, "Listen, they want you to come audition for Tales from the Crypt," and I was like, "Oh my God, they're making that into a series." I had collected the comic books as a kid. I couldn't believe it. I used to have to hide those comic books from my mother. I'd put them in my Casper comics, because they were like, "Oh, it causes
Casper
juvenile
comics.
delinquency,"
Of course.
It's so funny. I tell people to, watch our behind the screams, in the DVD set, and, about how bizarre it was that those comic books were, pre-code were so... scandalous, and
They were subversive. They were genuinely subversive. That's why they were great.
Juvenile delinquency. So I was like, I want to go down and audition. And then when I found out I get to go down to Kevin Yagher's studio to audition, I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. I remember walking into the studio and just, nobody stopped me. Nobody went like, "What are you doing here?" And I just kept walking around looking at all this stuff because Kevin was in the back, recording people on a boombox, as I remember, with like a little lav.
Now I'm going to stop you for 1 second, John, because you're about to get into prime territory, and we'll never go back to.
Okay, great.
I wanted to just talk a little Baltimore before you got full Crypt Keeper.
You got it.
Because we both come from Baltimore.
Oh, how did I not know that?
I don't know that we ever talked about it before.
Are you embarrassed to be from Baltimore?
Well, hey, I moved to New York first, and then I moved as far away from it as I could. I would have moved further, but I ran out of real estate.
I came from a really good part of Baltimore.
Yeah. Well, good for you.
I love Baltimore. Go on.
Yeah,
Go on, Edgar Allan Poe. Come on.
So you still have a good relationship with Baltimore.
Yeah, my family's all still back there. My dad's 98 years old. My mom's
You
92.
you went to Loch Raven High. Did they live? You live out in that part of
Yeah, by the Loch
county?
Raven Reservoir, and you know,
that's a nice part of Baltimore. Yeah,
it's
the
very
county,
cool.
yeah.
You know, a lot of people didn't even know Loch Raven was, you know, named after Raven. You know, the Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. They were like, oh, it must be because there's a lot of ravens around the reservoir. It's like, no.
Yeah,
The
but
reservoir was named after the Edgar Allan Poe, you know, story of the Raven.
yeah.
But
Yeah,
it was kind of a dark place to grow up. We used to have something called Twilight Movie. And it'd be at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I have done my homework. My mom was making dinner. We had 5 kids in my family.
Channel 13. It was WJZ.
There you go. And
I watched that too. Keep going. Keep going.
Great. Well, you know, it would have everything from like Doris Day movies to, you know, Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, Mothra.
To the Marx Brothers. W.C.
Fields. You know, and then they would also have all the Universal Horror Monster movies and the Roger Corman stuff like Tingler and House of Wax and, you know, The Fly and that kind of thing. And so that was everything that I loved. I couldn't believe that, you know, all the stuff that I loved growing up was the kind of thing that I was getting auditioned for, you know, so it was kind of fitting, you know.
And so suddenly there you are. Now you're in Kevin's studio walking around and you're about to audition for this thing. Now, so you had seen, all right, so was the Crypt Keeper's The Face as We Know Him, was that finished by the time
you know, there were different versions of it, as I remember. You know, Kevin had on one of his you know, tabletop benches that he was working on, and they were all similar at that point. But you know, Kevin had later showed me some other sketches and some of his you know, clay figurines that he had sculpted. But I think that most of them, there was one that had a nose, but I think the other 2 had no noses. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin.
No, that's right. Yeah.
This is what I remember. And but they, you know, I generally got the picture of, you know, the rotting flesh and the, you know, and it was funny because there were a couple of other actors in there preparing to audition for Kevin. And I remember them looking at the scripts, Kevin, and going, be careful what you ask for. This is terrible. They're like, what is this shit? Yeah. And I could see them trying to be really scary and mean and all this stuff. I'm like, you guys don't get this. This is fucking Shakespeare to this guy, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm going, okay, you got, you know, the Alfred Hitchcock style of punning, and you've got the, you know, and then of course, you know, I had been doing the Wizard of Oz in my act, and I was like, you know, I'll throw in the Margaret Hamilton laugh and all this stuff. And I go, and I can see Kevin, when I get into Kevin's little back area where he's recording people, I could see that he's like been sitting there for hours going, all right,
what you do, one more actor, dude.
Yeah, I got to hear one more fucking version of something that doesn't work. And I start doing this for him. Hello, kiddies. And he goes like this. And he's pointing at me going, like this, you know, keep going in that direction, you know. And I'm laughing at him, laughing at me. And I'm going, oh, this is perfect. The Crypt Keeper laughs at his own jokes. This is perfect. You know, and I start doing it for him. And that's mostly what I remember about that, about how, like, I was like, oh, good, he liked it. You know, of course, I'm sitting there thinking it's HBO. Nobody's got HBO yet. Hardly anybody has HBO. Nobody's going to see this. I'm already on an HBO series.
I think it was the first TV series, too, that HBO was doing, I think.
Well, I had been on First and 10, and then also some
Brian Benben's show.
Dream On. I was recurring on Dream On.
But those were TV shows.
Yes. Yeah. This was like the anthology series. I mean, there's a great story that you probably guys all know about how, like, when they showed these in the theater as a, you know, cast and crew screening and a promotional thing, that there was some guys sitting in front of me that were like crew guys or something, and they're like, oh my God, this is great TV. And the other guy goes, it's not TV, it's HBO. And the two execs look at each other like, oh, we're stealing that. And they did, it was like, it was amazing. But, Kevin, I got a call. They said, Kevin really liked you. Wants you to go, see Joel Silver and Richard Donner. And I had to drive all the way out into the corner of, the end of Radford, wherever that hits, like by the Santa Monica, the Mojave Desert somewhere. I don't know where you guys were, but they were in some little trailer that was all like fake paneling, and I did it for them, and they were like, great, we'll see you on the set. And I was like, oh my God, it's got to be the easiest thing that I ever got.
Well, you deserved it.
Thank you.
The deal I made with Joel was about directing and writing. So he said that, you can eventually do this, that Bob Zemeckis was going to be the one to audition and do everything. But he goes off and he was working on, I think, 2 or 3 of Back to the Future. I can't remember. He became unavailable. But they always said, you can run it. And it was, I think they were frightened of puppets. I think that's the overall scared them. So they go, can you handle this? I said, sure. And we had Rick Overton. You remember Rick Overton?
Yes.
Stand-up comedian.
Good friend of mine.
Michael Winslow came in, the guy that does all the things from Police Academy. And they did Academy. And they did, nice auditions. But I got to tell you that what happened was, and what I'd had everybody do is come look at the Crypt Keeper so that they could have a visual, right? And, like you said, the rotting throat and all that, and told them what I was doing. Not sure if the nose is going to stay or not, all that stuff. So that's right on with what John was saying. And then I had them first go back with the casting director and just read the lines without me being in the room, because I didn't want to first hear it with seeing John's face. I wanted to, imagine the Crypt Keeper and match that up without seeing that. So that's what I did with everybody. And I remember Michael Winslow came out and he was very, very cocky. I don't mean in a bad way. He was just kind of like, I just gave you the Crypt Keeper. He said, you don't have to look at anybody else. It was that kind of attitude.
Sure.
And he just wasn't right at all. I mean, it was like, he did things that where I couldn't even understand him. But what got me about John when he came in and he did the audition first. I mean, he laid it down on tape. It was just cassette tape, back then. I went in and listened to it. And then I think I remember pulling him back in to have him doing it again in front of me. And that's what I think what he's saying. The reaction was seeing him.
I didn't remember that.
I couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe that voice came out of this nice guy, this normal looking guy. And I wanted to see it for real. Like, what is that voice? And then what got me, what killed it was the laugh. I mean, and I was, my assignment was to bring in 3 voices out of all they sent me, I don't know, 20 people or so, and mostly stand-up comedians like John. And so they said, just pick 3 and we'll all decide together. And so I walked in, and this is no lie, I walked in with 1 tape and it was yours. And I gave it to Joel. I went into his office and he had this little console on the side of his desk. And, we both pulled up chairs and he popped it in. He was like a kid. He just loved this stuff. And he was just real close to the speaker. And I said, I don't care what you say. I don't, you can go look at other people. I'm not interested. I said, this guy is it. The voice is it. The laugh is incredible. I've looked at 20 guys. They don't even hold a candle. And I'm not just blowing smoke up.
Oh, thanks.
You're Heine. I'm telling you, this was, you blew me out of the water. And to this day, it's like that voice is just the classic voice with the character, because that's how great it is. So I said, here it is. That's it. That's all I have to say. And so then he said, well, I'll call him and have him come in. And that's, I think you went out to meet them. I wasn't there, but you went out to meet Joel and then Donner. Yeah. But I already said, I'm not kidding. I said, I'm not interested. This guy has, and as soon as Joel heard it, he just huge smile on his face and he was shaking his head, doing all that stuff. So I knew you were in at that point, but they had to make sure that at least one of the executives had signed off on it too. And that was Dick.
That's awesome.
So, and that was what I remember, about the whole, process and finding John. And that was so happy, because what happens, and you guys all know this, auditioning people, you got to look at it. You just want the person to walk in and give you the character. You just want them to say, here's your lead character, right? And that's what John did. He walked in and it was just like, oh my God.
It's like buying a house.
It's
like buying a house. Within a matter of seconds, this is it, or there's a fatal flaw here.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was just that's I was so happy when he left. I'm smiling now. I was so happy when he left because it was just like, this is the guy. They're not going to argue with me. I know they won't. And I think that gave me the confidence to walk in, and because, as we all know, it's hard to tell Joel what to do. Yeah. But I just had confidence because I knew that they wouldn't say no.
It's amazing because very often, and back then I had been auditioning for, major pilots and stuff like that. Here I was on a series, but it was HBO, which was easier to get. I mean, I think I was supposed to do 2 episodes and they laughed the whole time I worked, and I wound up on it 6 years. Yeah. But first and 10, but the rest of the stuff, I mean, they make a contract with you where you're going to get paid $25,000 a week if you get it, and you get nothing if you don't. Yes. And then you have to go be funny in the room. Yeah. And you're like, holy shit. And I was thinking, okay, this is HBO, maybe people won't even see it. And it's something I loved as a kid, and I'm just going to make this as fun as it is. And I already knew that if I had walked out of Kevin's studio and had a lot of fun with Kevin, that was all I cared about. Got to see some of his stuff on the wall and all that stuff. And, so in some ways it became like the easiest thing that I ever got because it was
also a one audition thing. Basically, it wasn't you had to go back and have callbacks.
That's it.
That was it. Let me ask you something, because at one point, either the first year, the second year, something, they came to me and said, "We're not being able to make a deal with John. Something happened with your deal." And
I wanted more. I wanted more than scale.
Well, yeah.
I wanted double scale instead of scale.
Wanted to get paid.
Scale plus 20. You
something happened, and Joel said we have to find another Crypt Keeper voice, and I was like falling apart. Like, what are you talking about? So they go out to Burbank Sound Studio in Burbank, and this old guy, I don't know who it was. This old guy is behind this mic. They said just go over there and listen to him. So I went over there, and he was fucking terrible. Excuse me. He was so bad, and he looked to me like at the time like 58 or something. It was just like, who is some old friend of Donner's probably, I don't know. But he was and kind of thank God. And I just called up Joe. I said, you guys are out of your mind. You guys are out of your mind. I don't know who this guy is. You got to go make a deal back with John. So what happened can you talk about what happened with that?
Oh yeah. Well, literally, I had already done 2 seasons at scale. Yeah. Which was fine. And, it is hard work. And I was doing 2 other series. I was on a network series as well at the time. And I was like, you know what? They could pay me double scale. Yeah. Or my manager, she's no longer with us. She died at 40 from cancer, but she used to be right in Joel's face. She was like one of the only people I've ever seen who wasn't scared of Joel Silver at all. She'd be like, Joel, you're sitting at a Frank Lloyd Wright desk. Sell that desk. Whatever money you get for it, give it to John. He'll never ask you for another cent. How's that? All right, I'll give him double scale. Whatever. But literally, we just wanted double scale. Just to let us know that I was coming in and getting paid something besides scale, because they never gave me more than a day player contract.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, once they started licensing it, they were licensing the show for nothing. I was getting residuals for 13 cents. I was just like, that's because how little they paid me. But it was fine. Everybody was working for what they could get paid to make something really special. But, they were such jerks about it. I was like, who cares? It's like, I love doing this show, but, you guys can pay me double scale. And they were like, well, we're going to fire you then.
Yeah. That was just a big threat. I think the whole thing of seeing this other guy audition was something. They were just trying to say, hey, yeah, we're in auditions for other people. Just they could manage that.
Now, this was after the second season?
I can't remember when it was. I almost want to think it was even the first season, like after the first few episodes. I do remember, John, when it was.
Well, they had done the 3 episodes, and then we didn't know if they were going to get it picked up. Of course, they brought in Gil.
Yeah.
And we can afford to do this.
No, we didn't come in until the 3rd season, Gil and I.
So it was after the 2nd season. Then,
yeah. Probably. So because that's what I just wanted to square up, because I remember it happening while Gil and I were running the show. I would have been surprised if it happened twice, but it only happened the once. Joe only tried to can your ass once.
He tried to can all the puppeteers at one point too.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say that.
He called me in the office. I brought my younger brother Chris with me, you guys remember Chris at all.
Sure,
And
sure.
we're still working together, but I said, you got to see, I want you to be a witness. I don't know what's going to come out of this guy's mouth. So don't come in. And at one point he said he just would work himself up into like this, anger.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, being the powerful producer, front that he put on. But he said, if I could take all the puppeteers, because what he wanted to do was get it down to one puppeteer. I said, Joel, if it's not broke, why fix it? It's working. There's 6 people, and we may be able to shave one off, but to do all that now, it's a whole reworking. It would cost more money to figure that out. You need computers, which we're just starting, to record and play back. I said, let's just keep it. And he just started worked himself up. And so he started screaming, if I could take all the puppeteers and put them in a box and sink them to the bottom of the ocean right now and get away with it, I would do it. I would fucking know. He's screaming, I would do it, And I just looked over at my brother Chris, like, you taking all this down? Because if he gets it,
I wind up in a box in the bottom.
Yeah. Make sure to write clearly.
So that was just a funny thing. The first time I came in to show Joel the pictures of all the sketches I did, he keeps me waiting. I remember Gil and I waited for 45 minutes one time in his lobby, like everybody, right? Sure. He says, okay, Joel, see you now. And I walk in and he's on the phone, pacing back and forth. And this is when he was before he took over Donner's office, when he was in his smaller office. And I looked to the side of the couch, and Steven Spielberg is sitting down, not to drop names. He's sitting there on the couch, patiently waiting for Joel to talk to him. And he hadn't talked to him yet. So he waves me in, sit down. And so I go to sit down, and I say, hey, how you doing? I look over at Steve, and he goes, fine, how are you? Fine. And then I said, are you here for Tales? He said, yeah, I did this show, what was that show that he did? Not Tales, it was...
Amazing Stories.
Amazing Stories, yes, Amazing Stories. So, and he said, Joel wants to be involved with this, and I'm not sure, And I said, I'm doing the host of the show, and so I pulled out the book. And so Stephen and I are looking at the pictures, and he picked one that he thought. I said, well, if you were to pick one of these, which one it would be? It was my least favorite that he picked. But he picked one that had like a riffraff from Rocky Horror looking kind of character that I did, and that was his favorite. And then finally Joel gets off, and then Stephen, they had a few words about, no, I'm not interested, and thank you for bringing me in. And then he split, and then I finished my meeting with Joel. But that was kind of a funny little thing.
Awesome.
So he had a little bit to do with Tales from the Crypt.
That's awesome. He did hire me to come back and do a cameo in Casper.
Oh, yes.
Because he loved the Crypt Keeper so much.
Right. Yeah,
I had auditioned for one of the uncles, the 3 ghost uncles, and I didn't get it. But then my manager calls me and goes, I just got a call from Steven Spielberg. I was like, what? They go, yeah, he asked if you would be so kind as to come do, and I'm obviously he had made a deal, with Joel or whatever to have the Crypt Keeper do and obviously they would have needed you or the puppeteers.
We did it, yeah.
And so
you had pre-recorded, yeah, of course, but
yeah. So they called me, and I was like, how bizarre to go, oh, he loves the Crypt Keeper. So he didn't pick the right one, but he wound up loving the one you picked.
Yeah, I guess so. So anyway,
it's all on you, Alan.
It's all on you, babe.
Yeah. So then, when Gil and I told the story in the first season, how we got sucked into this, Gil was HBO really trusted Gil with problematic shows. He had just solved a big problem for them on their the Vietnam War stories in Savannah. And suddenly they had this show called Tales from the Crypt with these big executive producers, and the second season had gone wildly over budget. Yeah. And there's going to be one more season, just a third season, and someone needed to see it out. And so I think the expectation was that Gil would manage the budget more prudently than it had been managed during the second season. And I was Gil's writing partner. Yep. And I think what got me in the door, being Gil's writing partner got me in the door. What I think sold me to Barry Josephson was my whole approach. Really, I love the comics as well. When I watched the show, my biggest question about the Crypt Keeper was, what does he do when he clocks out at the end of the day? What does he do when he's not being the Crypt Keeper? When he goes home, and he takes off the Crypt Keeper stuff.
Yeah.
Who is he really? And that's the Crypt Keeper that I wanted to spend time with, and fortunately Barry was cool with that. The puns unfortunately came with the territory. that was not.
That's the thing that keeps him quotable. Why everybody
Oh
loves him.
gosh,
so much.
yes. Now
Well, in actual fact, when you said that to Barry, and I think it was relayed to Joel, and I think they were sort of like nodding their heads, I don't think they had a clue what we were talking about.
Oh, certainly not. Oh, no. I don't think they expected where ultimately, the Crypt Keeper was an incredibly fun character through the first two seasons, but there was kind of sameness to him. The Lower Berth episode's different because it's about him.
Yes.
But when we suddenly opened the Crypt Keeper's world, he suddenly became more marketable.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
You guys wrote the one where he's in bed with a corpse.
Yes. Yes.
They give
Yes.
the head and keep it too. Yeah, that was one of the okay. We're going here now.
I love a ghoul who'll give you head and then let you keep it.
Yes. I was always rather fond of the hole in one.
Yes.
Dolphin.
That's one of my
Dolphin one.
favorites.
But
There's my caddy Juan.
Now-
I just got a hole in Juan.
I got to tell you that I would write them in batches. It was the only way to do it. I would sit down and as we were going to record them in batches, this was going to be usually 48 hours of absolute pain.
Yes.
Absolute pain. Writing those was so fucking hard. I can't tell you.
Well, the first couple seasons I got to help out and write some of them, and they are extremely hard to do.
Oh my God.
Try delivering them for
Yeah.
Oh my
over
God. my
30
God.
years.
Oh my God.
Because people still interview me as the Crypt Keeper and
Yes.
stuff, and I have to not only try to quote some of the ones that you guys wrote over the years, but also come up
Do
with
them
my
on
own
the fly.
on the fly.
Oh.
And it's amazing how much my brain works that way now. And I don't know, I got a kind of a love-hate relationship with it, but
Yeah. That's exactly what it is. It is. Because when you come up with a really good one, it's transcendent. It's like one of the funniest jokes ever.
Yeah. Well, John, you're great at improvising him too. I mean, we did that horror Hall of Fame.
oh my God.
Remember that? And that was live television. Well, at least we were recording it live. We couldn't make any mistakes.
Well,
And-
Brock
Brock-
Winkless and those
Yeah, Brock
guys
was
had
there.
gotten really good at just following me too.
Yeah,
where
he
they could
said he was
actually
standing
do
right
it in real
next to you
time.
in the sticks and watching your mouth and everything you were doing, and you were just off doing your own thing. So he had to follow along, but you pulled it off.
They're unbelievable. The puppeteers were unbelievable. But this is also about the time too. At what point were you able to add some servos and have the Crypt Keeper be able to speak where we could have him be faster and funnier?
The first season, the whole idea was, do you remember Jack, the character Jack from American Werewolf in London? As he slowly rotted, David Naughton's friend, who gets attacked and he's rotting. And so we kind of talked about that a lot, about having no lips. And so, having all that rotted away. And then after the first season, even the first three, it was like, okay, there's something missing here. We need to, because you can't see him pronounce it. It's just ends up being a mannequin or whatever, moving his lips. And I remember Bob I heard from Joel. Joel was had no issues with telling me how other people felt or whatever. So he just said, Bob hates the Crypt Keeper. I said, what do you mean hates the Crypt Keeper? He said, he hates the way he talks. I said, what are you talking about? He said, he just says doesn't speak very well. I said, well, what do you mean? What can I do? What's going on? So I walked up to Bob at a Joel Silver party in one of his Frank Lloyd Wright houses on and I walked right up to him. I said, so I heard you hate the Crypt Keeper, right? Can you tell me about that? And Bob was like, no, wait, that's not what he said. But he was saying basically, that the lips weren't moving and that, it didn't look very good because the lips weren't moving. We had a long talk about it. So I went right back and the next season or the next few, and I resculpted him. So I gave him full lips, even though there was chunks missing. I gave him full lips, and then we did put more servo work into those lips. And so he came back. I think it was season 2. At least on Lower Berth. By the time I was directing that episode, that he had full lip mobility, and so we improved him.
Yeah. Well, because I remember I auditioned, for you with, him being able to do, being a stand-up comic. I was, bringing all this kind of delivery to him. And the first time we went in the studio, Kevin's like, no, the mouth is like, only opens about this. Can we make him? And I go, okay, well, he'll talk slower and more ominously.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we did some quiet stuff, and then you'd go really big. I love that John would do that. He would take it, and his voice would go real, that guttural kind of. It hurt almost to listen to it. It was so painful to listen to. It'd be like that, down and like that kind of thing, and then it suddenly would be this way up high. By the way, did you guys know that the very first time you hear the Crypt Keeper in the very first episode, I can't remember if it's Zemeckis's or Donner's. The very first one, it's my voice, and the only reason is because we were missing the intro of where he says, good evening.
Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah. Good evening, boils and ghouls, and welcome to the Crypt. And the first time we were missing that, so I just stood in to do it on live on the thing just to fill in, and then John was going to come. We never had John come back in, and I couldn't believe it stuck. So I feel a part of you.
You are,
so
dude.
It's actually, it was actually.
I mean, now I'm finding out I probably never would have got the part if Zemeckis hadn't been doing his movies.
That's right.
And
it's our own little Easter egg.
I was meant to take over eventually, but what happened was Zemeckis went off, and then Donner was going to take over and direct, and then I would eventually. Bill Teitler at the time was producing. And he was saying, we'll get to you like episode 6 or maybe next season or something. And then I did a bunch of storyboards. And again, I think people were frightened of it being a puppet and didn't understand it. So they ended up, I showed them the storyboards and I walked them through the whole thing. And Tyler's there, and we're on the set. We're actually on the set of the Crypt right behind you, someplace over there. And he said, okay, great, kid, good luck. And slapped me in the back and walked off. And Tyler freaked out, ran after him. And that was it. And that's how I actually got it, because he said, he'll be fine. So then Bill was there on the set he was calling action and cut with me. And I finally asked, I said, can I talk to you for a second? I took him off set and I said, we can't both be doing this. If I'm doing this, you can't be here. I said, I need you to leave or I can't do this. So he kind of went, okay, I'm sorry. I'm just you've never directed before. I did some second unit, but he was like, you never really directed before. So I'm nervous. I said, well, just let me, give me a few, give me the day. Mm-hmm. And if you don't like what you see the next day, you can replace me or do it yourself or whatever. And so then I got the word that it was okay. And they gave me the thumbs up. But I almost didn't get the job because of that. But
and they're brilliant. I mean, they're fucking brilliant. Oh my gosh. There's little did we know, and now that I'm, go to a lot of conventions and stuff, at first over a certain number of years of the show, being, moving its way to sci-fi and this kind of stuff, I would go to a convention and some people would come up, oh, I love Tales from the Crypt, blah, 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 blah. But once we got to the age group of kids who had been sneaking to watch this show, became adults, young adults, my lines turned into, huge lines of people who swear that the Crypt Keeper was their gateway drug to horror.
Wow.
And I say that as a joke to them and they don't laugh. They go, yeah.
I'm so glad to have popped your scary.
I can't tell you how many times Alan and I were asked, and we at some of these conventions, and they would say, okay, so can you reveal now, like, who's the actor that plays the Crypt Keeper?
Yeah.
And we would say, there is no actor. And they go, come on, you could tell us. And I go, it's a puppet. He's a puppet run by 5 guys. They go, yeah, come on, it's an actor.
It was always, even as someone who was part of the group that made the Crypt Keeper, watching the Crypt Keeper come to life on set was always there was a strange bit of, I'll use the word magic for want of a better word. And though, hey, I sat in the recording studio with John, I watched him record it. I hear the damn beep track. I see all the puppeteers. And then, Kevin, you'd call action and suddenly he'd come to life.
The funny thing is that same thing happens to me whenever I do an animatronic, there's a lot less animatronics, obviously, this today, but every time I put that first skin on and fire up the mechanism and have it and do it to a recording or something like John's voice, I have the same exact feeling, even though I did it all. You when you put it together, there's something about, your element, the writing element, and then John's voice and all this stuff, and having those three things come together in front of you, and you're going, well, I know I was such a big part of this, and it was magic for me too. It has the same effect every time, whether it was Chucky or anything that I did, as soon with Brad Dourif's voice or whatever, the whole thing coming together, the writing and stuff.
It is. I atheist that I am. There was something spiritual took a hold of the damn thing.
I always tell people, I don't. This may sound weird, but you feel a little bit like a creator, in a sense, the creator of something by putting together there's something that didn't exist before, and now it's alive and moving. Even though you hear the servo motors and you know that you're playing back John's voice and all that stuff, but something about all of that together, it is a magical moment, and it soon fades.
So much so that's why we had a children's audience. I mean, every single one of them tells me they were walking by the TV and they'd hear this voice and they'd go over there and they'd see this thing moving and they were like, it scared the shit out of me, but I had to watch it. Yeah. It's like the roller coaster effect where they go, we're going to go on that. And you're like, no, I'm not going to get on that. And then you do finally go on it. It's like, I want one bigger. I want one badder. I want one, it's like that kind of thing.
And the fact that
Kevin,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm just thinking that, what you were saying earlier, I think we all shared that, because whether we were writing the puns or writing what he said, and figuring out, is he a doctor? Is he a Beatle? Is he a chiropractor? When we got to the place where it all came together.
Yes.
It was just so tingling. It was so painful in the sense that it was so hard to get there. Yeah. But once we got there and it was like mesmerizing. I mean, it was like, as we were doing it, it was like, wow,
And then whether you were directing Kevin or you were directing Gil, you'd yell cut, and he would deflate. He would just, and suddenly, like, all the magic just drain right out of him. And that's right. He's a damn puppet.
Yeah. He actually got that cue from Kevin and myself, because we would deflate as well. As we said, cut, two of us.
You should see me at the end of cut. But it was quite a when I writing for the Crypt Keeper was far more of a profound experience than I ever thought it was going to be, and I wanted that to have that experience. It was transcendent. I went through a lot of years. I went through a lot of dark years. We talked about that during season 1, where I denied. I denied my connection to all of this stuff. I don't know what I know what my problem was, and yet when I finally regained my mojo, the Crypt Keeper is so part of me. I think of those fucking puns every goddamn day.
Yeah. It was fun. You guys got to do even more in the writing, more and more different things. Like Gil just mentioned the Beatles. That was a great, so you got to, and you had to outdo yourself all the time. Like, the stories about something, it's about a carnival or it's about, something else or, whatever. Of course, murder is always there, but, you had to come up with inventive ways to make it different each time. And I just remember, there was a Godfather one that I loved.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
and there's the whole, the whole Godfather scene, shooting too. And it was a whole thing. And then of course the Beatles and just having them in a different costume, was great.
I especially tickled us when we would talk about it. Al and I would talk about it, and we would come up with these things, and we would meet in the morning or whatever, and he would say to me, "Well, what about?" Or I would say, "Well, what about?" And we'd look at each other and we would laugh, and we'd go, "Well, how are we going to do that? I mean, what if?" So if he's Marlon Brando, or if he's a chiropractor, it was really very it was mind-boggling for us, because we could go anywhere with it.
Yes, it really wasn't tied to anything you guys could do. I mean, obviously you're introducing a story, so it has to have something to do with that. But you can come up with whatever you wanted to.
Right.
Well, hey, we even took him into Forrest Gump territory.
Right. That's right.
Life
Bob's
is
last
like
episode.
a box of chocolate.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You never know what you're gonna get.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, but once we took him out of the crypt, in essence, he could go anywhere.
Yeah.
And he could do literally anything.
Yeah.
My most favorites were the ones where where Bill Sadler worked against the Crypt Keeper. When it was the Mummy once, and once as
playing chopped poke.
I think the Grim Reaper.
Yeah.
And that to me was just hilarious. The idea of the Crypt Keeper looking at the Grim Reaper thinking, God, you're so boring.
Yeah.
People ask me about the one
that
from
hilarious.
Oils Well That Ends Well all the time, where the Crypt Keeper's watching me on camera.
You know, the other actors are good, but this one is a regular Gory Cooper, a Robert Redford.
Yeah.
And I remember I was like, I told Kevin I'm gonna try to do the biggest, best laugh I've ever done. And which probably the biggest, best one I ever did is the one that's in the opening when he pops out of the casket.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever like matched that one, but that one was close, because he's sitting there laughing.
It's huge. You had to go on a little bit longer than normal. That I hate that for some reason. I never liked that shot because Van was by himself, in holding the Crypt Keeper up, and had to. I always try to take the jerk out of puppets, like the wobbly wagga.
Yeah.
So, and he was just single-handed, like one arm would be lifting that up and kind of trying to hold it steady. So that was the best of all the takes that we did, but it's one of those things you just stick and you're like, I wish I could go back and just take the woggle at it.
It worked, man.
Yeah,
that's the moment that all these grown kids tell me that where they had to leave the room.
Really?
That's the
Really?
moment. Yes,
And only you,
moment.
and only you, being the perfectionist that you were then, and you probably are now, and what work, you would see that.
Yeah.
But the audiences, and even I don't think I even saw it, or it didn't bother me if I did see it and I acknowledged it. It never for a moment took me out of it or made me feel like, oh, we should do that over.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that this is art necessarily, but they always say art's always abandoned, never finished, but always abandoned. You have to give up at one point. Filmmaking is the same way, right?
Yeah.
You have a cut, you go, look, we have to walk away from this at one point. So there's always those little things, but every time I see it, I go, gosh, one too many jerks, just one too many jerks.
But it was like an angry fist. He comes up,
Yeah.
I like this kind of thing in your face.
We all live in rewrites.
Yeah. Right.
They had when they had the Crypt Keeper at Not Scary Farms and at Halloween Horror Nights in Universal, they would replace the stunt show with a slasher show where blood's thrown out into the audience, and the Crypt Keeper would pop up in the set, and because it was one person holding him up, he moved like that.
Yeah,
a lot. And and I was always like, it's kind of puppety looking, but you know what? The audience loved it. It was something that fit with it. That was great. But those puppeteers were great. I miss Van and the audience.
We've lost three of them. Van Snowden and Brock Winkless and then Tony Ruprecht also. It wasn't one of the original puppeteers, but he came on.
I didn't know we lost Brock.
Yeah, Brock. Yeah, Brock died of MS.
Oh.
He suffered from it from the time he was like 19. But it's amazing that he had this thing going on, and you never know it.
No,
puppeteer through.
Wow.
He told me down the line. I think you're always afraid if you have something going on to tell anybody because you'll maybe lose your job or whatever. He kind of kept it from me, and I think I saw something like his finger twitching or something. I said, "Hey, what's that?" And he finally told me what was going on with him. But it was we were already way into other projects and stuff like that. But we lost him about I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But and now he's with the Crypt Keeper. No.
Right. Because you have a long life ahead of you, but an even longer death.
Now,
those lines, did you just improv that one?
I know, totally.
You are more than just a one-trick pony, Kevin. You've done more than just the Crypt Keeper. Chucky.
Yes.
Is
Go ahead.
Now you were there at the inception when when Chucky was created.
The very beginning, yeah. I met David Kirshner right after I'd done Nightmare on Elm Street 3, and I had a big Freddy Snake head that had articulation to it, lips and things, and he came over, and Rick Baker recommended me for the job, and he came over and saw that, and that kind of led to Chucky. And this is true. I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever heard this before, but because at the first year of Crypt, we didn't have a whole lot of money, so Joel just gave me what he could, and and I had to beg and borrow and take from other things. And one of the things that Chucky and the Crypt Keeper share are their eyeballs. So I knew that I loved the eyeballs of that way we had done for Chucky, because they started out kind of sky blue and they turned to these ice cold blue eyes. And I thought, these would really work for the Crypt Keeper and save me a lot of money. And I've got about 4 pair left over from Chucky that I didn't use. So I ended up putting those in the eyes. People think of the whole head was, the mechanism and everything. That was all done just for the Crypt Keeper.
Just the revelations keep dropping here.
Yes. Yeah. So
the kids know about it because you had told me that, and I just revealed it. Like, what kids were like, God, these look like Chucky eyes. I go, actually,
they are.
They are. And so it got around. So I a lot of people walk up to my table or email me or DM me and go, is it true? Is it true? And I go, yes, it is true.
It is now completely officially confirmed.
It is confirmed. Yes, they have the same eyes and the same window to the soul. Therefore,
that's right.
Wikipedia can now cite that.
Yeah. One of the funnest things that we did was the Crypt Jam. John, you remember that? The Crypt Jam?
I do.
And somebody cameo on that.
Somebody started singing it to me the other day, and I was like, well, Chucky Booker wrote that, who used to write for Janet Jackson. But there is a thing with him, Chucky and I doing this thing in the background.
Yes.
And I tell them that you directed it, and I love the tapping foot, and as you back up, it's just like a foot. There's no leg just part of a leg connected to it.
Yeah.
And it's really a great tune. I don't know if you guys ever knew this, but they had me promote it on Howard Stern.
Yes, I think I did. I think I heard that, actually.
Yeah, and so I go on Howard Stern, and Howard at the time was like, if he doesn't know you, he's just gonna he's gonna eat you for lunch. So I go on and I go, hello, Howard, and he goes, I hate the Crypt Keeper. I go, what do you mean you hate me? I'm just like you, Howard. I love to be hated. He's like, oh my God, he's laughing, and he can't help laughing. He's like, okay, I love you, John. It's the puppet I can't stand. And he starts going off on it. And he goes, and what is this song? He goes, is this like a Shatner album? I go, no.
Oh,
it's the Crypt Jam. It's awesome. I go, play some of it. And he plays it. He goes, oh, this is pretty good. But at the end, he's trying to break the DVD, and he can't break the DVD and stuff. He goes, that's what I hate about these DVDs. You can't break them. I got a call back from Gary Delabate, who works with him. He's like, oh my God, Howard just loved you. It was so great. He goes, they never had me back on, but it was.
He never had you back on? You didn't go back on after this?
No, at that point they were like negotiating into, going into, then he wound up with, syndicated and all that stuff. I think he was still mainly in New York and in some syndication, but, God, I have that on a cassette tape somewhere.
The early days, long before satellite radio.
I just liked it because it was it gave us something. It was a longer piece, obviously. I think it was a 3 or 4 minute song, but I love the fact that we had
well, we tried to do one with
girls around rap and all that stuff.
Oh my God,
a whole other thing, and I got to do fun things like the Crypt Keeper right next to this girl who was twerking.
No, well, I love you did the flash dance thing where he throws his hair back and
slow motion thing. Yeah, that was great. And he wet his hair down. It was fantastic.
It's funny because I remember they tried to do one with Heavy D, and it was not. Yeah. It just didn't have the same kind of Crypt Keeper-ish thing. This one had more of a thriller thing to it.
Yeah, he appeared in an episode. He appeared in it was on a Dead Man's Chest.
That's right.
Yeah. Billy Friedkin's episode.
Yeah, it's a good one.
That's right.
The Crypt Keeper's in the house with a groove that's nasty and mean, like the effects of a guillotine. A permanent headache's the end of the mission, 'cause you have entered the Keeper's terror vision.
It's still so fresh.
You remember all that? Yeah. How are you doing it so fresh? That's so great.
Oh my God.
What are you working on now, Kevin?
I'm doing a TV series called Mrs. Davis. Just doing some, I'm still in television, and there's a couple other projects going on, but doing some secret stuff with well, I can't talk to you. I'd have to
Of course, of
You'd
course.
have
You'd
to
have to kill us.
No,
That's why it's secret.
secret stuff. But yeah, and so I shouldn't even mention it. But yeah, I mean, and just keeping busy. You know, still doing it. You know, not directing anymore really much. But how about you guys?
Well, we'll get to us.
Okay.
John, hey, you know, because the audience is going to get sick of us. We're here to talk about you guys. But we'll answer the question. John, you're working all the time, man. You're like the hardest working man in show business, aren't you?
You know, I feel really lucky. You know, first of all, there's another thing that I can credit, you know, doing the Crypt Keeper with, and that was launching my voiceover career.
Oh wow.
Because although people knew that I, you know, had a talent for this, especially because I did all these voices and characters in my stand-up, which is why HBO even thought to bring me in on this. You know, it seated me as one of the top voiceover people in the business. And, you know, as you get older, there are just less roles written for your age group. And of course, it's more competitive because the guys who are still around are all great. You know, you like to think you're good, but there's also a lot of other really good people, you know. And I still get my share of auditions for some on-camera stuff here and there, and I still get offered things here and there. But
Your reel is very good, by the way.
oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
No, it really is. I don't know why people should hire you more. In fact,
you know,
if Gil and I can finish putting this show together, you got a job, my friend.
I'm on it, baby. I would love it, but you know, I literally, you know, you're not counted out by anything that, you know, as a voice actor. You know, during the pandemic, I have my own little, you know, sound studio. This is not actually it, although it looks like it. I do have the microphone here. Here we go. Here, we can push that right in there. But, you know, I was able to do some major, you know, Disney pictures, and I worked for Illumination, and I worked on the new Ghostbusters, and, you know, doing the little Marshmallow guys and some other stuff, along with another group of crazy voiceover guys, and that kind of thing. And so, you know, I mean, you could play anything, you know, any age group, any, you know, gender, any, you know, anything that even that's not alive or human. So, you know, I did Flora and Ulysses, which was the big Disney kids movie last year.
Right.
As you know, they go, oh, he did Miko the raccoon. He must be able to do a squirrel. Okay. So
squirrel must be within his range.
Exactly.
So rodents are your range?
To know that, yes, to know that's in your wheelhouse is, it's a turning wheel. But, you know, so.
Do you do other mammals?
Yes.
What size mammal do you go up to? And that, alas, is when suddenly we had technical difficulties with John's connection. As we like to say around here, we only ever think we have the technology. The technology always has us. Still, we pressed on valiantly with John hooking in via cell phone.
Joel Silver and get it. There's a built-in audience. We would all get rich off of Funko Pops, just doing Funko Pops, you know, because nobody has the licensing for them. They won't do them.
Well,
but you know, Kevin, the image of your puppet is ripped off on a daily basis. It's on T-shirts. There's, you know it. I'm sure you've gone and done these things, and people are bringing you a bunch of shit that's not yours.
Yeah, I've seen before.
And in fact, people have been bringing me the Creep from Creep Show to sign, and I'm like, you know, this is not me, right? You know, this is not Kevin's puppet, right? You know, this is. And they're like, yeah, that's all right. Just sign it.
M. Night Shyamalan tried to do Crypt.
Yes.
And I think he had an option on the EC Comics. Is that what?
But he thought he had, but he didn't.
Yeah. Well, but even so, even if he had the comics, he didn't have the Crypt Keeper.
Yeah.
And without the Crypt Keeper, you just have a bunch of stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have the Safdie brothers been in contact with you guys at all, or have you heard anything about them? Because they were talking to me about. I was maybe working on a movie with them, and they talked about Josh wanted to do that. He said he was in talks, so I didn't know who he was talking to. But I said, well, good luck. because
Yeah,
there's a lot of people to go through.
Yeah, there's a huge problem because the estate and Joel don't like each other.
Yeah.
And they don't think feel that he treated Bill Gaines properly. So they don't want to work with Joel. And Joel claims to have the rights to the Crypt Keeper. So it's a kind of a quagmire that I don't think anyone will ever figure out.
Yeah.
Because it's not about money. It's really about other things.
Yeah.
Bad feelings.
Yeah.
And those are worth more than money.
Well, so we should come up with a new character.
Yeah.
All four of us own. John does the voice. We all have a piece of it. We call him the Crypt Man.
The Crypt Man. Yes. Well,
The Crypt Guy.
Well, I think, Kevin, we should go back. I mean, one of those original concepts, I believe, was the Orthodox Jew. And I think maybe the Crypt Keeper, we can call him something else, the Golem.
Golem, yeah.
The Crypt Golem.
Yeah.
Or Golem Crypt.
That's unkosher.
He's already writing it.
Who brought in the pork?
Oh, geez. Well, I thank you guys so much for this fantastic conversation. Like I said, we will do this again. There's still so much to talk about.
Well, almost better than just the conversations that we had reminiscing about all the beginnings of our careers. It was really good to see you, Kevin. I haven't seen you forever.
I know.
And John,
I
I
haven't
see you
changed
once in a while, which is
changed an
nice.
iota.
Yeah, but this was really nice. We got to do it again.
Yes.
Oh gosh, yes. Yes. Yeah. Well, when you're down in LA next time, Gil, we will have a reunion.
Yeah, reunion.
Or
Absolutely.
when we're shooting Tales from the Crypt in Vancouver.
Hey, whichever comes first. Thank you guys so
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. And thank you everyone for being here. Don't forget to like us and subscribe. Promise to make it worth your while, and we'll see you next time. The How Not to Make a Movie podcast is executive produced by me, Alan Katz, by Gil Adler, and by Jason Stein. Our artwork was done by the amazing Jody Webster, and Jason Jody, along with Mando, are all the hosts of the fun and informative Dads from the Crypt podcast. Follow them for what my old pal the Crypt Keeper would have called terrific crypt content.